The once peaceful alien world of Lyra's people had fallen into chaos. It had begun as a whisper rumors of a deadly disease spreading quickly across planets in the galaxy. Within weeks, it reached her home planet. The disease, known as Sharath, was unlike anything their medical experts had ever seen. It ravaged its victims with a ferocity that left no chance for recovery. Lyra, a member of the graceful, powerful Altherian race, knew her time was running out. Lyra had come to Earth not long ago, on a diplomatic mission to understand the human race. They had sent ambassadors to every corner of the galaxy, but humanity had always been a mystery. What Lyra hadn't expected was to find herself entangled in a deadly crisis that would put her entire species at risk. It wasn't until she woke up one morning with a fever that she realized she had contracted the disease. Her body was burning with heat, and her energy was rapidly fading. Her people, despite their advanced technology, had no cure. The disease was aggressive, and there was no known antidote. Lyra's survival depended on something no one had expected, something that could only be found on Earth. She had heard of the human's strange immunity to diseases. In all her research, she had found that humans were naturally immune to many viruses and illnesses that had wiped out entire species across the galaxy. But there was a catch. To gain their immunity, the human must bond with the alien. And the only way to bond was through a deeply personal physical connection. Lyra was not sure how to approach this. It felt too foreign, too strange. The idea of sharing herself with a human, even in such a desperate moment, was not something she had ever imagined. But as she lay in bed, growing weaker with every passing hour, the truth became undeniable. She had to do it tiff only to survive. She forced herself out of bed, her head swimming, and staggered toward the door. The only hope now rested on finding a human who could help her. She had no idea who he would be, or how this would unfold. But she knew one thing. The bond would be the only way to save her. Hours later, Lyra stood in front of a small, quiet house on the outskirts of a human city. Her steps were slow, her strength drained by the disease, but there was no turning back. She had tracked down the human who might be able to help her. Man who lived a humble life far away from the troubles of intergalactic politics, the human, named Daniel, had no idea what was about to unfold. He had never seen an alien before, and he certainly had no understanding of the galactic challenges at play. But Lyra knew his role in this story. The human held the key to her survival. She knocked softly on the door. The sound echoed in the quiet of the evening. Daniel opened the door, his expression filled with curiosity at the sight of the alien woman before him. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice warm and welcoming. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. His eyes were kind, a stark contrast to the cold alien world she had come from. She had read about human kindness, but to see it in person, to feel it so directly, it was almost overwhelming. I need your help," she said, her voice weak, but steady. Daniel frowned. "What's wrong? You don't look well." "I have contracted a disease. It's killing me," she replied, her voice faltering as the truth hung heavy between them. He stepped forward, concern written all over his face. "You need a doctor, don't you? We can take you to one." Lyra shook her head. "No, not a doctor. A cure. ... There is no cure. Not for my kind." Daniel's brow furrowed even deeper. "Then what do you need from me?" Lyra took a deep breath. She had practiced this conversation in her mind over and over, but it never felt real until now. "To save my life. I need to bond with you," she said, her words soft but certain. Daniel blinked in surprise. He was taken aback, unsure of what. She meant, bond with me, like ... how? She paused, her gaze dropping to the ground before meeting his eyes again. "There is a rare quality in humans. Quality that makes your immune system ... different from mine. I need to merge with you to gain the immunity you carry." He stared at her for a long moment, unsure if he had heard her correctly. She couldn't possibly mean, "You want me to?" Daniel began, but his voice trailed off, not knowing how to finish the sentence. Lyra nodded. "Yes. To survive, I must bond with you in the way my people never have to. It is the only way to heal my body. Daniel was silent for a moment. My mind was spinning, trying to comprehend the strange request. This was something out of a science fiction novel, not real life. But Lyra's weakened state made it impossible for him to ignore the urgency in her eyes. She was not asking for this lightly. She was desperate. I understand if you don't. Want to help? She added quickly, sensing his hesitation. But if you don't, I will die. The weight of her words hit Daniel hard. He could see the fear and the pain in her eyes, and for the first time in his life he realized just how much was at stake. He couldn't just turn her away. She was from a distant world, an alien unlike anything he had ever imagined. Yet, in that moment, she wasn't just an alien. She was someone in need. Okay, Daniel said, finally, I'll help you. Lyra nodded, her face softening with a quiet relief. This was only the beginning. She didn't know where this path would lead, but she knew one thing for sure. Her future now depended on this human. The next day, Daniel sat in his small living room, his mind a swirl of confusion. He'd agreed to help Lyra, the alien woman who had come to him with a request he could hardly understand. She was unlike anything he had ever seen. Yet there was something about her, something about the fear in her eyes that made him feel a deep sense of responsibility. He couldn't stop thinking about her words. To bond with a human was something that sounded more like a myth than a reality. But Lyra had been clear. Without his help, she would die. And her death could mean the end of something far greater, something he couldn't even begin to understand. He had seen many strange things in his life, but nothing quite like this. Lyra had told him that she wasn't just any alien. She was an ambassador from a planet far away. Her people were powerful and ancient. But even they were vulnerable to the deadly disease that had taken hold of her. Daniel had tried to brush it off, thinking that perhaps she had mistaken him for someone else, or that there was some other way to save her. But as the hours passed, his doubts grew weaker. He had already promised to help her, and now it was time to figure out what that really meant. Suddenly there was a knock on his door, pulling him from his thoughts. He opened it to find Lyra standing there, looking weaker than before. Her once vibrant skin had lost some of its glow, and her eyes were tired, but still, there was a fire within them. Lyra, Daniel said, his voice soft with concern. You look worse? I am worse, she said quietly, but I am ready. Daniel hesitated. Ready for what? Lyra took a deep breath, her voice steady, but her face filled with determination. I need you to understand what this means. She said, in my world, this is not something done lightly. It is a bond that changes everything. Daniel furrowed his brow. What do you mean by that? I am not just asking for help. I am asking for you to trust me, she explained. I don't expect you to do this without questions. But no, the bond between us will not be like anything you have ever experienced. It will change both of us. He took a step back, running a hand through his hair. This was too much. He was just an ordinary guy, wasn't prepared for this, no matter how much he wanted to help. But the thought of her dying, of all the people she represented dying, was unbearable. I don't know if I can do this, he admitted, his voice low. I mean, how am I supposed to to bond with you? I don't understand any of this. Lyra's eyes softened. You don't need to understand everything. You just need to trust me, and trust that I will respect you. This is not something I do lightly either, but it is the only way for me to survive. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest. He wasn't sure if it was fear or something else entirely. There was a connection between them, something he couldn't explain. He had seen her vulnerability, her strength, and he felt an overwhelming desire to help her. But as the weight of the situation grew heavier, his mind raced. Was he really ready to do this? Could he really go through with it? He looked at her. Her once proud posture had slumped a little, and her breath was shallow. But her eyes still held a spark of life that made him want to protect her. He could see that she wasn't asking for this because she wanted to. She was asking because she had no choice. After a long silence, Daniel spoke, his voice quiet but resolute. I'll help you, but I need to know more. I need to understand how this works. Lyra nodded, relieved but not surprised. She had known this would be difficult. I understand, she said.
Oh.
I'll explain everything.
Um,
But there's something important you must understand. The bond between us will not just be a simple act. It will connect us in ways that are hard to explain. Your body will share its immunity with me, and in return, I will give you something. A piece of my own strength, my people's power. Daniel took a step back, the weight of her words settling over him. Power? How? It is not just physical, she said softly. It is a mental connection as well. Shared awareness of one another's thoughts, feelings, and the ability to feel each other's presence in ways no human can imagine. Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. The idea of sharing his mind with someone, let alone an alien, was overwhelming. But as he looked at Lyra, he couldn't help but wonder if he had a choice. She had already chosen him, and he had promised to help her. But what if I can't handle it? He asked. What if it's too much? Lyra's eyes softened and she stepped closer to him. We will go slowly. You will never be alone in this. I will guide you through the process. Together, we can make it work. Daniel thought for a moment. He wasn't sure what would happen next, or if he was making the right choice. But one thing was clear, he couldn't just walk away. Not when someone's life was at stake. All right, he said, his voice steady now. Let's do it. Lyra smiled, though it was faint. Thank you, and with that, their journey began. Neither of them knew exactly where it would take them, but they both understood that the decision they had just made would change everything. For better or for worse, they were now bound by fate. The days after Daniel agreed to help, Lyra felt strange. They spent hours talking, learning more about each other, trying to make sense of the situation that had brought them together. Lyra had been kind, patient, and understanding, knowing that the human had never faced a dilemma like this before. Daniel, on the other hand, was still trying to come to terms with the decision he had made. The more he thought about it, the more uncertain he became. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't someone who should be the one to save an alien ambassador, let alone have his immunity passed on to her in such an intimate way. Every time he looked at Lyra, though he was reminded of her strength. She was not asking for this because it was easy or desirable. She was asking because it was her only chance for survival. Her people were powerful, but even the most advanced civilizations could be struck down by a disease they couldn't control. Daniel couldn't ignore that, and so he had agreed. He would do whatever it took to help her survive. The morning of the ritual arrived. Lyra had explained that it wasn't just about the physical act. It was a ritual to unlock the full potential of the human immunity that she needed. The entire process would bond them in a way that went far beyond just sharing immunity. It was a deep, almost mystical connection, a bond that would tie their lives together. Lyra had told him it would be a gradual process. They would start slow, so that Daniel could adjust to the changes. But even with her gentle assurances, Daniel couldn't help but feel uneasy. What if he wasn't strong enough? What if he couldn't handle the mental connection she had described? He stood in his living room, watching as Lyra prepared. She was pale, her strength fading, but there was a fire in her eyes. She moved with the grace of someone who had already made up their mind. Someone who was ready for what was to come. Are you sure you're ready? Daniel asked, his voice soft but filled with concern. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was so much more to this than just giving her immunity. Lyra turned to him and smiled, though the smile was faint. I have no choice, she replied simply. You are my only hope, Daniel. Her words struck him. He had known that she was desperate, but hearing it again made him realize just how much trust she was putting in him. This wasn't just about saving her life. It was about saving her people, and potentially preventing the destruction of entire civilizations. His heart thudded in his chest. He couldn't back out now. Okay, he said, his voice steady despite the whirlwind of thoughts in his mind. Let's do this. Lyra nodded, her expression serious. She stepped toward him, close enough for him to feel the heat of her body. Her scent something foreign but pleasant. She didn't look like someone who was about to undergo a life-changing ritual. Instead, she looked like someone who had already made peace with her fate. Someone who had accepted the weight of responsibility. Just remember, she said, her voice soft, this will be the beginning of something new. It may be hard at first, but we will go through it together. Daniel nodded again, trying to steady his breathing. This wasn't just about giving her his immunity. This was about becoming a part of her, connecting with her on a level that was beyond physical. As Lyra began to explain the first steps of the process, Daniel's nerves began to settle. She had described it as a mental connection, something that would allow them to share thoughts, emotions, and even some memories. It wasn't just about saving her life. It was about merging their experiences, their very beings. We'll start slowly, Lyra continued. At first, you will feel a tingle like a thread connecting us. You'll get used to it in time. Daniel was uncertain, but the more she explained, the more he realized that this was a true partnership. There would be no turning back, but perhaps that was what made this moment so powerful. They were doing this together. He sat down on the couch, and Lyra sat beside him, their knees barely touching. She placed her hand on his arm, and for a moment, the world seemed to disappear. He could feel her warmth, her presence. Close your eyes, Lyra said softly. Focus on your breathing. Try to clear your mind. Daniel did as she asked, taking in slow, deep breaths. The room was quiet, except for the faint sound of their breathing and the occasional rustle of Lyra's clothing as he focused on his breathing. He felt something shift. It started as a slight sensation of pull, a warmth that spread from his chest to his arms. His thoughts began to slow, and he felt a sudden clarity, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. When he opened his eyes, he saw Lyra staring at him, her eyes wide with a mix of wonder and uncertainty. I can feel it, she whispered. Daniel nodded.
So can I?
It wasn't just a physical sensation. It was deeper, more profound. He could feel her presence in his mind, almost like an echo of her thoughts. It was a strange sensation, but it didn't feel wrong. It felt natural. This is only the beginning, Lyra said, her voice steady. We'll start to feel more of me, and I will feel more of you. But it's okay. We'll learn to understand it. Daniel didn't know what to say. The connection was unlike anything he had ever experienced. It was overwhelming, but at the same time, there was something comforting about it. It felt like they were two pieces of a puzzle that had finally clicked into place, and as the bond deepened, Daniel knew that this was only the beginning of their journey together. It wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, both physical and emotional. But for the first time, he felt certain about one thing: he wasn't alone in this. They were in this together. The days following the initial connection between Daniel and Lyra were filled with uncertainty and awe. The bond that had begun to form between them was growing stronger with each passing day, but it wasn't without its challenges. Went on, Daniel began to feel the weight of their shared connection more deeply. He could hear fragments of Lyra's thoughts and sense her emotions as if they were his own. Sometimes it was overwhelming, and other times it felt like a comforting presence. The most difficult part was the lack of control. Every time he tried to focus on his own thoughts, they seemed to blur with Lyra's. But Lyra had been patient with him, helping him learn how to navigate this new way of thinking, this shared space between them. One afternoon, as they sat in Daniel's living room, Lyra spoke in a calm, soothing voice. Daniel, you must understand that this bond is not just a mental one. It will take time for you to adjust to the changes it brings. Daniel nodded, feeling the familiar tingle of their connection. I think I'm starting to get used to it, he said, though his voice was laced with uncertainty. But sometimes it feels like I'm losing myself, like your thoughts are becoming my thoughts. Lyra smiled softly, her eyes filled with understanding. That is the nature of the bond. Over time, it will feel more natural. But there will be moments where it will be hard to separate your feelings from mine. That is something we will work through together. I don't know if I'm ready for all of this, Daniel admitted, his voice quiet. It's one thing to agree to help you, but it's another to share so much of myself with you. Lyra reached out and gently placed her hand on his. Warmth of her touch calmed him, grounding him in the present moment. You are already stronger than you know, Daniel. The connection is not just a physical one. It's a bond of trust, of sacrifice. We are not just saving my life. We are becoming a part of each other's worlds. It is not easy, but it is the only way. Daniel took a deep breath, trying to calm the swirl of emotions inside him. He had never been one for grand gestures or complicated relationships. But this was different. This was bigger than both of them. It was about life and death, not just for Lyra, but for her people and perhaps for the future of their worlds. "Okay," Daniel said, his voice steady, despite the nerves he still felt. "I'll do whatever it takes, I trust you." Lyra nodded, her eyes shining with a mixture of gratitude and something deeper, something that Daniel couldn't quite name. "Thank you. That means more to me than you know." That evening, Lyra prepared for the next stage of the ritual. The room was dimly lit, the only sound, the soft hum of distant city noise. Daniel sat on the couch, his mind still swirling with thoughts of what was to come. He had agreed to help her, but now, faced with the reality of the next steps, he wasn't sure if he was ready. The ritual wasn't just about their connection. It would also unlock something deeper within them both. Lyra stood before him, her gaze steady. "This part of the ritual is not just about physical bonding. It will unlock our true connection, the one that will save my life. You must let go of your fears and trust that I will be there with you every step of the way." Daniel's heart raced as he looked up at her. She was beautiful, in ways he couldn't even begin to describe. Her presence was calming, yet her strength was undeniable. She was here because she had no other choice, but she had also trusted him with something incredibly powerful, something that could change their worlds. As he looked into her eyes, Daniel felt his fear begin to fade. He had made a promise, and he wasn't going to back out now. He had to do this for her, for the galaxy, and for himself. This was a step he had never expected to take, but it was one that he would take with her no matter what. "Are you ready?" Lyra asked softly, her voice filled with both kindness and strength. Daniel nodded slowly. "Yes, let's do this." Lyra smiled and reached out, her hand hovering near his chest. She closed her eyes, focusing on the bond they had shared over the past few days. Daniel closed his eyes as well, trying to block out the noise in his mind and focus on her presence. For a brief moment, there was nothing but silence, nothing but the gentle sound of their breathing and the shared connection between them. Then, slowly, they began the ritual. As Lyra's hand touched his chest, Daniel felt a surge of energy coursing through him. It was as though every nerve in his body was suddenly alive with power, with a deep, pulsing energy that seemed to come from nowhere. He felt the warmth of Lyra's touch spread through him, and for a moment, he couldn't tell where his own body ended and hers began. The sensation was intense, unlike anything he had ever felt before. It wasn't just physical. It was a deep connection that went beyond words, beyond thoughts. It was as if their very souls were touching, merging, becoming something more than what they had been before. Daniel could feel Lyra's thoughts and emotions flooding his mind. He felt her fear, her hope, her desperation to survive. He could feel her gratitude for his willingness to help her, and he felt a sense of peace that he hadn't known before. It was as though their connection was a bridge between two worlds, human and alien, that had once seemed impossible to cross. The bond deepened, and Daniel felt the shift in his body. The immunity that Lyra had spoken of began to flow into her, and as it did, he felt his own strength growing. The disease that had ravaged her body slowly began to fade, replaced by a new energy that coursed through both of them. But with it came a deep, emotional connection, one that left Daniel breathless. It was overwhelming, but it also felt right. It wasn't just helping her to survive. They were becoming something new, something neither of them could fully comprehend. Finally, as the ritual came to an end, they both opened their eyes. Lyra's face was pale, but there was a spark of life in her eyes that hadn't been there before. "I can feel it," Lyra whispered. "It's working. I can feel the change." Daniel nodded, still overwhelmed by the experience. "I can feel it too." That moment, he knew that their bond was unbreakable. They had done it together. And now, there was no turning back. The days that followed the ritual were a blur for Daniel. Lyra seemed to be improving with every passing hour, her once weak body slowly regaining its strength. The fever that had burned through her skin had faded, replaced by a calm, almost peaceful energy. Her skin had taken on a faint glow, not from the light around her, but from the life that had returned to her. For Daniel, the changes were more difficult to comprehend. He still felt the weight of their bond, that strange connection between them that allowed him to sense her thoughts and feelings. It was as though she were always with him, a presence in the back of his mind. At times it was overwhelming, but more often than not, it was comforting. Lyra's strength, her calmness in the face of uncertainty, became a source of reassurance for him. They had begun to talk more about her home, about the galaxy, and about the future. Despite the strange circumstances, Daniel found himself growing. Closer to her, he had never imagined that he would bond with an alien, let alone form a connection so deep. Yet here they were, two beings from entirely different worlds, sharing more than just a physical connection. One evening, as the sun began to set, casting a warm glow through the windows, Lyra turned to Daniel with a serious look on her face. The air between them seemed to shift, becoming heavier with the weight of an unspoken question. "Daniel," she began, her voice soft but steady, "you know this bond will change everything, not just for me, but for you as well." Daniel nodded, feeling the familiar tingle of their connection. He knew exactly what she meant. Their lives would never be the same after this. He had already changed in ways he hadn't expected. But it wasn't just the physical change as the immunity they had shared. It was deeper than that. "I understand," he said, his voice low. But I'm not sure I'm ready for what comes next." Lyra placed her hand on his, her touch gentle yet firm. "We don't have a choice, Daniel. This bond is stronger than we are. It is a part of us now." Her words echoed in his mind, stirring up emotions he had not fully understood. She was right. Didn't have a choice anymore. What had started as a desperate act to save her life had evolved into something more. They were connected in a way that transcended both of their worlds. "I never expected to be in this situation," Daniel admitted, his voice filled with a mix of awe and uncertainty. "I didn't think it would be so. Tense." Lyra smiled, a sad but knowing smile. "Neither did I. But we've done what needed to be done. Now we must figure out what comes next." Daniel felt a flicker of unease. What did come next? He had agreed to help her, to bond with her, but what would their relationship look like now? Could he return to his normal life? Would she return to hers? Or had they both become part of something bigger than either of them could understand? "I don't know if I'm ready for this," Daniel said quietly, his gaze meeting hers. "I don't know what I'm supposed to feel or what I'm supposed to do." Lyra's eyes softened. "It's okay not to have all the answers. We will find our way together." Her words were like a balm to his anxious thoughts. Maybe it was okay not to have all the answers. Maybe, in this strange and unfamiliar situation, the most important thing was to keep moving forward. Together. The next few days passed in a haze of uncertainty and discovery. Lyra's strength continued to return. Her energy no longer consumed by the disease. The bond between her and Daniel remained as strong as ever, but it was no longer overwhelming. Instead, it had become a steady presence, like the constant hum of the universe around them. One evening, as they sat together on the couch, Lyra turned to Daniel with a serious expression. "There's something I must tell you," she said softly. "Something about my people." Daniel looked at her, his heart beating a little faster. He had always known that there was more to Lyra's story than she had told him. "What is it?" Lyra took a deep breath. "The people. The Altherians. They don't take bonds like this lightly. The ritual we completed, the one that allowed me to share your immunity, is rare, and it comes with consequences." Daniel's brow furrowed in confusion. "What kind of consequences?" She looked at him with a mixture of regret and determination. "The bond we share is not just about immunity. It is a part of something much larger, something that has been in place for centuries. The bond creates a connection between the two of us that is deeper than anything you've experienced before. It links us on a spiritual level, a level that transcends space and time." Daniel stared at her, trying to process her words. "What does that mean for us?" "It means that we are now bound," Lyra explained. If you were to leave, the bond would tear at us. It would be painful, and it could lead to dangerous consequences. Daniel's heart skipped a beat. Are you saying we can't separate? Lyra's eyes met his, filled with both sadness and understanding. Not without great risk. The bond is permanent. It is not just a matter of physical connection anymore. It is a part of us, and it always will be. Daniel felt a sense of dread settle in his stomach. He had never imagined something so serious would come from his decision to help her. But as he looked at Lyra, he realized something he didn't regret it. Not in the slightest. I won't leave you, Daniel said, his voice steady. I don't know what the future holds, but I'll face it with you. Whatever comes, we'll face it together. Lyra's expression softened, and she reached for his hand. Thank you, Daniel. You don't know what that means to me? In that moment, Daniel understood the true weight of their bond. It wasn't just about survival. It wasn't just about saving a life. It was about two souls becoming intertwined in ways neither of them had anticipated. And now there was no going back. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, Daniel felt certain of one thing. He wasn't alone, and neither was she. The sun was setting over the horizon, casting a warm golden glow through the window. Inside Daniel's small living room, the air was still, and the quiet seemed to stretch on forever. He sat on the couch, his mind heavy with the weight of everything that had happened in the past few days. He glanced at Lyra, who sat across from him, her face serene but filled with a quiet strength. They had come so far, both of them. It had started with a simple promise, a promise to help her survive. Now, it had evolved into something much deeper, something neither of them could have foreseen. They were no longer just two people from different worlds. They were connected in a way that transcended the physical, a bond that was impossible to ignore. Lyra turned to him, her eyes searching his face as if she could see right through him. Are you okay? She asked, her voice gentle, yet filled with concern. Daniel sighed, his fingers tracing the edge of the coffee table in front of him. I don't know. It's hard to explain. I feel ... different. The bond between us, it's stronger. Now, isn't it? Lyra nodded slowly, her expression thoughtful. Yes, the ritual has completed its purpose. The connection between us is now permanent. And it's not just a physical bond. It's a mental and emotional one as well. We are linked in ways that go beyond our understanding. Daniel shifted in his seat, feeling the weight of her words settle over him. It was true. He could feel her thoughts, her emotions, as if they were his own. There was a constant presence in the back of his mind, a sense of Lyra's being that was always with him. It was both comforting and overwhelming. I never imagined it would be like this, Daniel said quietly. I thought it would just be about saving you, about helping you survive. But now it feels like we're something more. Lyra smiled softly, her eyes filled with understanding. We are more, but that doesn't mean it will be easy. The bond between us is not just about immunity or survival. It's about sharing everything, our lives, our thoughts, our feelings. And that can be difficult. It'll be hard to navigate at times. Daniel looked at her, his heart heavy with the weight of their shared connection. But I'm not alone anymore. Neither are you. No, Lyra agreed, her voice warm. You're not alone. And neither am I. For a moment, the two of them sat in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Daniel thought about everything they had been through, the ritual, the bond, the strange and unfamiliar feelings that had surfaced between them. It wasn't just about the immunity she had gained from him. It was about the way their lives had become intertwined in ways that were beyond their control. Daniel's mind drifted back to the earlier conversation they had shared about the bond and its consequences. Lyra had told him that if they ever separated, the bond would tear at them. That thought had lingered in his mind ever since, a constant reminder of the gravity of their situation. He had promised her that he wouldn't leave, but that promise now felt like a chain, binding them together in ways he hadn't anticipated. You said we're linked in ways we don't fully understand, Daniel said, his voice barely above a whisper. Do you think we'll ever truly understand it? Lyra's eyes met his, and for a moment there was a flicker of something uncertainty. Perhaps, but it was quickly replaced by the calm strength that had drawn him to her in the first place. I think that understanding will come with time. We don't have to have all the answers right now. The bond will guide us, Daniel. It will help us grow, and it will teach us how to navigate the path ahead. Daniel nodded, but a part of him still felt uneasy. He had agreed to help her, and in doing so, he had agreed to something much bigger than he had ever imagined. He wasn't sure if he was ready for everything that lay ahead, but he knew one thing for certain. He couldn't undo it. They were bound now, in a way that went far beyond simple obligation. For the first time since they had started this journey together, Daniel allowed himself to relax. The fear, the doubt, the uncertainty, they were still there, lurking in the back of his mind. But they didn't feel as overwhelming as they had before. Lyra's presence, her calm assurance, gave him the strength to push those fears aside. Even if just for a moment. Lyra's voice broke through his thoughts. There is still much to do, Daniel. Our bond is not just about us. It's about what we can do for each other, for our worlds. You are a part of something much bigger now, something that could change everything. Daniel looked at her, his heart racing. What do you mean? Lyra took a deep breath, as if preparing herself for the words she was about to say. I'm not the only one who needs help. My people, the Altherians, are facing an even greater danger than the disease that nearly killed me. The disease was just the beginning. There is a war brewing in the galaxy, and it's only a matter of time before it reaches us. Daniel felt his stomach tighten at her words. A war? Yes, Lyra said, her voice filled with quiet resolve. A war that threatens the entire galaxy. The bond we share, the connection between us, it could be the key to stopping it. Together, we can help bring peace, not just to my people, but to the galaxy as a whole. Daniel stared at her, his mind racing with the implications of her words. A war? The fate of the galaxy? He had never imagined his life would take such a dramatic turn. But now, it seemed like he was standing at the precipice of something much larger than himself. He took a deep breath and nodded slowly. Do next. Lyra's eyes shone with determination. We fight together.